Hey, everybody. Welcome to Voyager, Please, a painful voyage through the Delta Quadrant. I'm Joseph.
I'm Peter.
And Peter, we're doing this just one day after Valentine's Day. And in the spirit of that, I'd like to, before we go into hate, to offer some love.
Can we do love?
A small amount of love.
This isn't going to violate any sort of charter or contract that we have signed with Internet?
No, fortunately, because it has to do with our very first, I would call them friends of the show. So Sarah Graves and Ian Paxton were kind enough and generous enough in spirit.
You're a dick, dude. We don't even use our own last names and you just called them out.
They participate on our Facebook page, and they're genuinely big fans. So I want to give them.
They outed themselves.
Yeah, give them full attention and full props. They came through for us, Peter. They came through on your request. Our listeners will have already heard it by now because I attached it to the episode that just published. But we got a shitty recorder version of the Voyager theme, thanks to their musical talents. And I'm happy to say that Sarah and Ian's first musical collaboration as a couple was the creation of our podcast theme music. We're bringing people together, Peter. We're bringing people together.
I'm being driven away, man. My green-eyed jealousy swelled up at me. These people with real artistic talent, I can't take it. I told them, do it shitty. I heard it. I'm like, wow, that's way better than probably my best could have been. And they're like, yeah, that we did it on the first take without any editing, just like you said. And I'm like, I think for it to really get any worse for you guys physically, it would require you to polish off a bottle of tequila first. So I appreciate the effort that these two talented people put into trying to make themselves sound as bad as I had hoped I could sound.
Truly, their worst was better than your best. And for that, we thank them.
Thank you, guys.
And also, thank you to everybody else that's been sharing, liking, and commenting, particularly on Facebook. Really appreciate people being into the show and telling us what they like and what tips they have for us, and otherwise just kind of getting involved. That's part of the fun.
Yeah, and sticking through us while we knock the rust off our podcast skills. It's been a long time since we've been behind the mic, and it's certainly the game's changed, the production quality expectations have changed, and we're trying to keep up. I was going through, now that we're on Spotify, which I think is really cool. We went down to Cancun, and I was sitting there listening to my own podcast because I thought you were doing a really good job with drops and other little fun stuff with editing. One of the episodes I noticed we kind of come off, I think it's episode 3 for us, some machine gun dialogue, and I was curious what was going on there, and Joe let me in on a terrible secret.
I wanted to let you down gently because you're on vacation, but you have, I would call them endearing vocal tics.
Valley girlisms.
And I do my best to clean it up so that the Peter that's presented to the world is the best version of you.
D-liked, D-ud. So we're making a conscious effort on our end to keep the conversation smooth and without those annoying little, lazy uhs and likes.
Vocal tics are part of the recording life. I appreciate everybody sticking with us, and we're knocking the rust off, like Peter said. We'll get better. My editing will get better. We'll move forward.
Speaking of sticking with things, here we are. Season 1, Episode 5, The Cloud, which right off the bat I think is going to tell us the lazy kind of shit we're in for here.
There was a dramatic thunder as you said the name of the episode here. It might even have showed up on my mic, which... considering the quality of the episode, is perfectly ominous. My wife very nearly walked out on watching this with me, probably 3 times. It's terrible. It's god-awful, but I enjoyed how terrible it was.
Did you?
And I can't wait to talk about it. It's just so... previous bad episodes we watched have either been bad in a boring way, bad in a predictable way, or bad in an infuriating way.
Offensive way.
This is just bad in a hilarious way. So we've used all parts of the bad buffalo. with this, and I loved it.
It's Thursday. I want to say I watched this thing on Tuesday, and as I'm sitting here reviewing my notes and getting ready for the show, like I honestly had to really sit there and think about what the fuck this episode was about. That's how boring and just non-memorable it was to me. I think you just watched it tonight, didn't you?
Yeah, I just watched it a couple hours ago. I watched it when I got home from my real boy job, and it's three B plots masquerading as an episode. I think I know what they were intending to do with this. This was intended to be a let's get to know these characters type of vignette episode where we have these different situations that everyone's in and we're learning about them.
Mm.
But instead of it seeming to be connected to an overarching plot, like, say, a great example of that kind of episode, Lower Decks from TNG,
Wonderful.
this just feels disjointed and somewhat pointless, mildly racist, all kinds of
very mildly.
yes. So let's get into this. We start with
hold on before we jump into it. This broke off of a pattern that I've been seeing out of these Voyager episodes. Up to this point, I feel like, going back listening to our own work, we talk so much about the beginning parts of the episode that by the end we're just kind of like speeding through stuff. I think the writing style so far has really front loaded all of the kind of character exploration, personality, experimentation, that kind of stuff in the beginning of the episodes. They go real heavy about here's the continuity of the story so far and the stuff you care about, and then you get deeper in the episode and it's just dungeon crawls and kind of boring fluff. This one, they somehow managed to make all the fun stuff the boring, fluffy dungeon crawl attention waster.
I don't think anything in this episode works, and the problem of the week is the most generic sci-fi problem of the week of all time. In fact, it's generic even just in Star Trek. In fact, isn't this in some ways a complete rehash of the very first episode of TNG? So we get an open scene where Janeway is contemplating the necessity of her to be more than a textbook Starfleet captain. An exploration character-wise that I think is worthy, but they don't spend too much time on it. She kind of does it at the very beginning, and then we get a little bit at the very end, and that's basically it. She's going around the ship. She's doing this personal log about how she has to connect with this crew now that they're essentially the only community of man, as she puts it, within a billion light years. And she's struggling with it. She's kind of awkward. She doesn't know how to interact with people outside of her military organization professional distance. And you see this physically. You see this as she has an awkward conversation with Tom Paris and Harry Kim in the lunchroom. She's working through it. You can see her work through it. An interesting idea that they don't barely do anything with by the end of the episode.
The only really interesting part to this whole beginning exposition was when she just casually strolls through engineering and B'Elanna Torres, who has been nothing but a raging bitch so far, is suddenly like completely caught off guard and scared. I mean, you would think that someone just walked in on her smoking in the girls' room or something. Like she's like, Captain, I didn't know. Now all of a sudden she's real timid and afraid of Janeway and Karis, and this is like the same woman she was just telling to, fuck off 2 episodes ago.
Yeah, 2 episodes ago, she was assaulting her coworkers. Now when the captain comes by, she's like, oh boy, sir! Gosh! Yeah, there was some weird stuff that happened with in terms of these character moments. We'll get into the psychology of Harry Kim in the not too distant future that left me cold.
They start shitting on Neelix in that little lunchroom scene too, didn't they?
They're talking about his cooking and that it's basically making everyone sick or it's unpalatable. And Tom Paris don't give a shit. Tom Paris is telling them how it is. This food sucks.
I liked that they, again, I'm following the story arc of the replicator situation on the Voyager. So in this, now the replicators, they've acknowledged work, which I guess the cat's out of the bag when they're talking about replicating fucking alien lungs and stuff from the last episode, Phage. But now they're saying that, Neelix's contribution to the ship is that he helps conserve replicator energy. Which at some point I think someone should also jumped in and said, yeah, so he's responsible for conserving replicator energy and, necessitating us coming into contact with fucking plague-ridden flesh thieves.
There's a distinct lack of gratitude expressed by Neelix throughout this episode. He's trying to pressure Janeway into not replicating coffee, which I guess is the first time we get introduced to Janeway's addiction to coffee. Mm. She gives a great "bitch, are you for real" look to Neelix when he attempts to countermand her deciding to go get coffee, and introduces her to his alien sludge that's supposed to replace it.
Look like melted Tootsie Rolls.
I was going to say poop, but Tootsie Rolls works. Janeway clearly does not find that appetizing and beats a quick retreat is the moment she's given the opportunity by a page from Chakotay, heads up to the bridge, and it turns out they've come across what looks like a nebula that has potential energy sources in it, which Janeway is interested in so she doesn't have to drink Neelix's distilled alien poop juice.
Have we come to the conclusion that the sentient spacefaring species of the Delta Quadrant essentially prize the same raw materials that Starfleet does?
It makes sense with what we've established in Star Trek up to this point anyway. Because all of the spacefaring species you see in the Alpha and the Beta quadrants in the mainline shows all use the same resources as well. So there seems to be a level of universality to spacefaring species.
So, I mean, we just saw that the, what were the phage dudes called? The
Vidians.
The Vidians. I mean, they were lured onto that planet by trace or heavy signals of dilithium, right?
That is correct.
And inside this this nebula, they were picking up large amounts of antimatter?
No, I forget the
I think so.
Deuterium, whatever. Energy shit.
Stuff, for replicator fuel.
Right.
Right off the bat, I see oh, hey, look, here's some much needed material seemingly out in the open. And I'm like, oh, great, another honeypot episode.
Well, they sense the magic space juice that's going to make their 24th century space magic work and decide to explore it, to investigate. And before we get into the investigation scene, we have our journey down our first B-plot road. And that B-plot road is Chakotay's magical Indian powers.
Jesus.
Holy fucking shit. I completely forgot that this was a subplot in the first season of the show with the Chakotay Indian magical powers shit.
Do you think Robert Beltran, who is the actor for Chakotay, did he bat an eyelash at any point in any of this and just go, this is garbage, this is kind of like exploitation of my heritage, and shoehorning this crap really is not cool?
Have you ever seen Parks and Rec?
No.
There's a great
episode. Is he in it?
No, he's not in it, but there's a great episode featuring an Indian tribe that lives in the area that Parks and Rec takes place, when they exploit the ignorance of white people in a hilarious fashion. And if it had been something like that, where Chakotay is selling Janeway a bill of goods, I would have enjoyed it. But it's done with this earnestness where she is just super into the idea of having a spirit guide, this animal companion spirit guide, and Chakotay is selling this to her like, yes, you too can have Indian magic friends. Allow me to take you down the path.
There's two conversation tangents I want to go on off of really the Chakotay Janeway thing here. The first is religion, and was this the 24th century?
Correct.
Have we ever seen any mention of Catholicism in a next-gen property?
I don't think that up to this point any religion has ever been invoked aside from the Bajoran religion and similar native spiritual beliefs we laid in TNG, and then occasional alien beliefs on One Shot, alien races, as episodes dictate. There's never been an exploration of human religious belief like Christianity, Judaism, Islam, anything like that.
I don't even think we're talking about an exploration. I'm talking about just simple acknowledgement.
Yeah, I agree. Not even an acknowledgement.
So, as we, the viewers, would best be able to tell, in the 24th century, there is no major religion. Like, science has replaced the church for all intents and purposes, right?
It would seem that at the very least, religion is no longer an active guiding force in anyone's life or a major motivation.
I would say that they probably steer away from it because, politics and religion are we going to get the most heat from people complaining about it's being done wrong and this and that. The fact that they're dragging his spirituality and essentially his religion into it makes me feel like the writers did not consider this Native American stuff to actually be a real religion so much as like a hokey voodoo magic dust.
Janeway treats it that way. Just this look on her face like, tell me more.
I couldn't tell if the look on Janeway throughout this episode is one of like just someone's desperate for human contact and she's really feeling alienated as part of like this captain's protocol, so she's willing to just latch on to any cockamamie nonsense for the sake of human contact. And the more I'm watching, specifically with this and like how she overacts all this stuff, I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, what if she's just trolling Chakotay? What if she's just
That's what it felt like.
She's just fucking with you. She's like, yes. Oh my gosh, I would absolutely love to go down this Mr. Toad's wild adventure with you. Yeah. Like, how far can I get this guy? Oh, you're going to bring out your magic medicine bag and all this? Sure.
I love the, I bet you a spirit animal is a bear. If I would have paid cash money if Chakotay said, that's what they call my dick. Like, anything other than what we got would have been better.
Yeah, so she's, they're laying out this animal talk bullshit. And if religion's the first thing that this episode made me think about, the second one was drug use. And what flies in the Federation? They've got synthahol where you can drink alcohol and not get dangerously drunk or whatever. You don't really see anybody smoking cigarettes. You don't see any heroin addictions. I don't believe anybody's doing crocodile and having their leg rot off in a bucket. So where has the Benevolent Federation and the United Federation of Planets decided to, or Starfleet really, military installation or complex, where have they drawn the line on what do we consider an addictive drug? Again, you're not seeing cigarettes. It's bad to the health. It's got this addictive property. Why allow coffee?
That is a fantastic... I don't even know where to go with that, because you're right. You would think that there is probably some rules about what you could and couldn't do, but as it's also a utopian ideal. You can create anything, so it's like replicators don't let you get that quality H. I can't get that black tar heroin out of there. Like,
the reason I bring it up is later in the episode, Chakotay goes deeper into this this magical spiritual journey, and he
they do 24th century peyote.
Yeah, he's like we used to contact this the animal in the spiritual journey with psychedelics, but now our Indian hocus pocus scientists have come up with some sort of table vibrator you land your hand on, and that does it. So if his religion has steered away from drugs, like everything is so drug averse in the 24th century to the point where Native Americans are steering away from, like, we are steeped in our deep and rich traditions to the point where it has survived into the 24th century. Except for the way that we get to those deep traditions, we've replaced it with science doodads. But so he's cut peyote out of this magic bag, yet this terrible coffee is still there, bringing addiction crazed Starfleet captains to drive their ships into the belly of the beast, literally.
Okay, so two things. First, I want to dive more into this medicine stuff. Let's just do a full exploration.
Okay.
And then I'll give you the answer to your question at the end.
All right.
I think what the answer is. So later on in the episode, just to follow this B plot to its conclusion, Chakotay shows up in Janeway's office while they're all on duty, by the way, like doing work.
Yes.
He's got this cheap felt like blanket. He unravels his medicine bag, which he's never shown to. It's his special Indian magic stuff.
Hold on, let me stop you right there. This magic medicine bag he has, it's like, I don't know, it's probably about the size of 2 college textbooks together, right?
Right.
It doesn't look like something that just fits on your person, right?
Right.
It's where this fucking thing come from, because correct me if I'm wrong, didn't all the Maquis have to like emergency transport off their fucking hoopty ass ghetto Firebird?
We know that Chakotay went back to suicide bomb the Kmart Klingons space hoopty. So maybe he like just grabbed it on the way out, like while he was waiting for his beam out. So he just had that shit tucked under the glove compartment of his Trans Am, just pulled that shit out and waited to get pulled off.
It's under a Saturday night special. Eventually, I want to get back to that Maquis ship in a later episode and talk about why, if you're stuck out in the middle of nowhere, jamming one of the 2 possible ships to get you home, needlessly throwing away might have been a bad idea, but I guess we can get to that later. So yeah, so he pops this, he comes in with oh, hey, I know you're working, but that like he's desperate too to push this on people. Like usually people tell me just to fuck off or roll their eyes when I tell them about my spirit animals, but you've shown even the little bit of interest. He's like busting out like full Mormon recruitment mode on her.
My wife said, is he trying to recruit her to Scientology? This is what this feels like. This feels like he's about to audit her and give her a pamphlet and suggest some classes. I mean, it definitely feels like a recruitment move. But while they're on duty, he rolls the stuff out, and he's got his little Indian magic doodads in there, along with the space peyote.
Janeway's wide-eyed with her, what I want to call sarcasm.
Yeah, with that sort of fawning, oh, how exotic kind of look. Like, ooh, so exciting.
Wow. What rich history. Now, every other time I've seen any mention of, like, finding your spirit animal and, like, this deep inward introspective spiritual journey, it's taken like characters in any other sort of media like at least a 5-minute montage, if not longer, to come to term over a course of days and some really grueling hot sweat box antics, right? How long does it take, Janeway?
Oh, we get about 30 seconds of swelling music and a little sultry narration, from Chakotay. Yes, listen to the sound of my voice, Janeway. Yes, feel your animal companion. Feel that you're in this. Yes, now feel my dick while you're high on this peyote. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, give me.
No, there's no peyote. There's just a hand vibrator. And then boom, like that, she sees the salamander, and she is like completely reduced the Native American spirit adventure process to like what had to be at least 30 seconds, and she is just in it.
Yeah, and suddenly meeting her magic spirit guide, who she cannot name lest she offend it.
Yeah.
So this shit is real. It's not just her subconscious.
And then what happens?
It's apparently a thing.
And then what happens?
They get interrupted.
Again, the lack of fucking security on this ship is astounding. She's like, oh, I should have had the computer set the doors to do not disturb. How about you set the fucking doors to lock?
Well, it might have been. We don't know. They might have overcome the door lock block because B'Elanna doesn't come in until she is bid to do so. She just rings the doorbell. That's what interrupts it.
Maybe I had a timing off.
Chakotay knows that this is a rare opportunity for him to get someone into his weirdo
cult.
Indian cult.
Yeah.
Yes. So he made sure that door was locked on his way in.
You know what? Here, I'm gonna go expanded headcanon here for a second. I'm gonna say that none of this stuff is real, and that Chakotay is actually brainwashing people with some sort of mind control device that they need physical contact with. That's why he doesn't use peyotes, because we'll say that this isn't real Native American spirituality, right? This is Chakotay is running a cult. He ran a cult back on Maquis vessel. B'Elanna, being the raging bitch she was managed to break free of the cult, and she is her eyes are open. She knows what's going on here, and she's intentionally cock blocking Chakotay on this recruitment because she doesn't want Janeway falling down that hole.
I love your headcanon about these guys because it makes them feel like actual fringe terrorists who have dark ulterior motives, which they probably should have been. But since they're not, I like where you're going with this, that they're just slightly incompetent but genuinely bad people.
Yeah, but B'Elanna does legitimately say, yeah, fuck this shit. I tried to punch my spirit animal and I told Chakotay to shove his cult up his ass. Was there anything else really to this spiritual journey of sarcasm and drug replacement, convenient drug replacements?
That was the end of it. But to answer your question as to why the whole drug thing works the way it does, and I think it explains why this exploration of this incredibly insensitive and racist exploration of Indian spiritual beliefs happens, is because the things that are on the show are what's inoffensive to white people, particularly in the 1990s. You know? So talking about real religion, a little too risque for network TV, for Star Trek, but we'll talk about Indian stuff because it's neat and exotic, and we don't want to show people doing real drugs or getting drunk, but coffee's fine, a little tea, a little Earl Grey hot.
I go crazy without my coffee if I don't have my my pumpkin spice latte. I'm willing to fly into a dangerous Nebula honey pot.
I don't put much stock in a lot of the social fights of the day, but it feels right to say that you have to look at the people who made the show and the people who are consuming the show, and then suddenly you think, this is probably what they think would be okay.
Back to the bridge, back to the beginning of the episode. They find this this honeypot nebula. Kim makes an off comment like, wow, I've never seen that before. And I would say the coolest thing to come out of this episode is the fact that Tuvok hits the comm badge on his chest, and it manages to send Harry Kim a personal message.
Yeah, it's real quiet just to him.
Like directional audio, whatever, and he's basically chill out, you're acting like a bitch and you're embarrassing us.
Can we talk about how intensely weird and terrible Harry Kim is in this episode? Can we do a full exploration of all of the weird Kim shit?
I have written down Kim is a real bitch. I think that's going to sum up my stance on this thing. Yeah, it's a real man boy episode for him, isn't it?
We see him after he gets a little sassy with Tuvok as they're exploring this nebula, and then Tuvok's flummoxed later, and he tries to throw it back at him, but he does it in the bitchiest way possible.
That's what prompted me to write that he's a real bitch. He's lucky Tuvok didn't come over there and pinch his ass.
You should just slap him 5 fingers to the face. I mean,
yeah. He
was being just a little bitch about it. And then what's the next shot of Kim? Laying in bed with a face mask on, with
a robot. He's straight as a board, hands at his hips, toes pointed up, and this face mask on in a lit room.
He's got his doughy Asian boy face, with his silky hair, framing it all with his mask on, and you get this intense music in this shadow, so you don't know what's about to happen, and then all of a sudden we see it's who? Tom Paris, who's waking him up in the middle of the night.
I want to go right back into the complete lack of fucking door locks. Paris B&Es into Kim's fucking quarters and starts touching on him while he's sleeping.
At least Tom Paris says, I learned that shit in prison. At least Tom Paris says, yes, I broke into your shit. That's what I did. Now come on.
I broke into your shit with the intention of jerking off on your face, and as we used to say in space prison, quote unquote, glazing you. But now that you've woken up and taken your little mask off, let me show you my nasty sex dungeon holodeck adventure.
So we get there. But before we even get there, Harry Kim has this... I don't know who wrote this. Who fucking wrote this dialogue that they're walking down? He's trying to justify why he wears the mask. And it's we had this guy who was an insomniac that I was in the academy with, and I got used to it. And then he says, it reminds me of being in my mother's womb. And then he steadfastly claims that he remembers being in his mother's womb. And Tom Paris just gives him this look dude, what the fuck are you telling me this? I do not want to know that shit. There's some shit you never want to know about someone. You don't. Oh
Yeah.
my God!
So Kim laying there like a fucking robot, right, with this mask on, was creepy. And I'm like, who sleeps with the mask on? And I even got my notes like when these walk around, like, yeah, why do you have a mask on? They start going on. Oh, I had this genius workaholic. I was like, that's pretty cool. That's a good setup with Chekhov's gun. They're giving you a little bit of background. I'm like, awesome. That's a good use of that mask prop. And then they throw in this fucking thing about the woman. It's like, too far. What?
Somebody somewhere in the mid 1990s was in a script writing room, put a dot at the end of that paragraph and said, nailed it. I mean, what the fuck? But we get through that so that Tom can bring Harry to the kind of hollow program that only Tom Paris could design, a seedy French fuck den that he apparently patronized at length when he was in the academy.
So reportedly, I don't have any, hard evidence that this is the case. And he hasn't just walked, Kim hasn't just walked into a pure object of fantasy. This was fucking gross. This scene, him. So he walks him in. It's this French bar, and immediately these holodeck robots come up and start like pretty much putting their hand down his pants and like jacking him off. Like two different girls are up kissing on him. There's like these smarmy ass dudes coming up and talking about how great he is, this and that. By today's technology standards, what Paris did to Kim was say, hey dude, come onto my room. I want to show you something. And then Kim and Paris walk into his bedroom, and on his bed is Tom's collection of fleshlights. This purple one, her name's Judy. I go real fast with the pumps on this one. And this blue one, well, this is Rose. I go nice and slow. This one comes from a long family that's owned dude, I don't care what your nasty hologram fuck bots are. I don't want them coming up and kissing me after they just kissed you. Like, what? You broke into my fucking bedroom in the middle of the night. I gotta work in the morning to show me the holograms that beat you off. You don't want to hear about me in the womb. I don't want to hear about you in her womb, dude. This is gross. This is no.
He literally brings him to his porn.
Yeah.
This is his porn. He says, hey, Harry, come to my porn with me, and we can engage in the porn together. It's interactive porn that I've programmed to be my personal J.O. fantasies.
And it was so important that I broke into your bedroom and started touching on you to wake you up.
It's so creepy.
Creepy.
Oh, it's like his personal fan fiction.
Yeah.
All the women want him. All the men want to be him.
Yeah.
I'm
gonna say he's worse than Barkley.
I mean, Barkley's was creepy, and this is also creepy. But there's something where Barkley had this psychosis to what he was doing that was even creepier. Where Tom is just like, I'm a pervert, and I don't care. Who knows? I'm alone in the Delta Quadrant, and I have only my fleshlights for company. And something about it is more natural and understanding than Barkley's weird, I'm making fleshbot versions of my coworkers. These are at least potentially fictional creations.
Barkley had the common decency to keep that shit private, whereas Tom Paris is essentially kidnapping and dragging people into his filth. So, he's showing it off.
Let's fast forward to the end, since we're talking about this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So we get the scene where Tom invites Harry into his porn, and they have a good time experiencing his porn. And we get to the end, and Harry encounters the captain in the turbo lift, and Harry gets the nerve up that he didn't have at the beginning to say, "Hey, if you wanna have a hang at some point, we can hang."
Hey, I heard you listening to Chakotay's bullshit cult sales pitch. You might be desperate for some human context, so let me offer you an alternative to Chakotay's Cutco pyramid scheme.
Yeah, why don't you come with me to the holodeck? We're all going to engage in Tom Paris's porn fantasy together.
Ugh.
And you get a shot of the bar, this French bar. It's supposed to be this. It looks like it's from the 17th century, but whatever. And it's the whole senior staff is in there.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is now involved in Tom's J.O. Fantasyland.
Everybody is in there touching the things that Tom has sex with.
Yes!
They're all taking turns passing around his fleshlights and his lube and his old magazines.
And the captain comes in and gets hit on immediately by the dirty French gigolo character that's there. The French alien gigolo character.
So boring with, yet another ridge on the forehead. Like, why not just make it a dude, a regular dude? What?
Tom's like, oh, I'm sorry, Captain. I'm sorry that this guy who watches while I fuck these fake French broads hit on you. I'm so sorry. And she's like, no, it's fine. It's part of the charm. Let's play this quaint billiards game that you've got going here with all your semen stained electronic friends. This seems like something that I, the captain, am going to engage in.
So part of this holodeck thing, jumping back in on the technology, they spend a pretty decent amount of time trying to get Kim drunk. Kim saying like, hey, I don't want to drink wine, and then it's too early or too late at night or something. And they go back and forth. Well, the wine's not really going to get you drunk because... So is holodeck food not real food then? Like, I always was under the assumption that the holodeck just incorporated replicator technology. So if you sat down in a holodeck restaurant and had a steak, that everything's a hologram, but the steak you eat is, legit. This is making it seem like it's a holographic steak, so it'll still stay together in your mouth, and then...
They have
weird Starfleet tech questions.
If I recall, I'm gonna go super deep on some Trek nerdery, but I think I have the answer.
Please
Here
do.
it is. I'm going deep dive. Do you remember the Moriarty episodes from TNG?
Yes.
The second Moriarty episode was the one where he's trying to effect a escape, essentially, from the holodeck.
That's the one where he recreates a ship in the holodeck and tricks people into thinking they've left, right?
Right, the ship in the bottle. So he creates that puzzle. And there's an explanation that's provided to him during that from Barclay, where Barclay explains that matter created in the holodeck doesn't have true cohesion, right? It's not real matter. And I don't think it's replicated food. It's like replicated matter is real matter. It has cohesion. It's been created to look and be that thing that it was replicated to be, whether it be a steak or a medical device or whatever. What I believe Barclay was saying in that scene is matter here, whether it be steak or a medical device or whatever, isn't have the same level of cohesion and substance that replicated matter does. And that as a consequence, that's why it's impossible to take him off of the holodeck using the transporter or whatever, because he, like all other matter on the holodeck, isn't real. It's just light bound by a magnetic field.
Sure. I know anything you take off the holodeck ultimately dissipates. I guess I was under the impression that intentional consumables were actually replicated. So
I don't recall ever seeing a scene where people summon up food in the holodeck and consume it. I think there's been scenes where people are eating on the holodeck. There is no confirmation that is not necessarily food brought in from outside of it. So this, I believe, is a question that has never been completely answered.
Yeah.
But using that tiny bit of minutia from that TNG episode, I think you can rule out food from or alcohol from the holodeck having the same level of substances as even replicated food.
Fascinating stuff. Hey, people at home, you still awake? Huh? We're going to go back to saying shit and fuck now. Chakotay's dick.
It's Bear. This is Chakotay's
Tom
dick.
Paris tried to rape people named Harry Kim. He's a Night Stalker.
Tom has really violated a lot of workplace ethic rules in this episode.
Fuck ethic rules. Like, he violated personal space rules. Anyway, so that whole nasty parade of sex toys, real oddball element to that episode. Wow, we're like 42 minutes in. We haven't actually even talked about the main plot here.
There wasn't one. That's the thing. It was all just little side plots. So we've really talked about a lot of the episode just by banging out the weirdo B plots that happen around the other weirdo B plot that forms the core of the episode, and that's the space conundrum, which is this, spoiler alert, the nebula's not really a fucking nebula. I know, I'm sure you're shocked.
So they fly into this nebula looking for their antimatter, and they run into, all sorts of resistance because it's like white blood cells essentially attacking them. And they only manage to get out by breaking out they have 37 is it quantum or photon torpedoes?
Photon torpedoes.
They only got 37. Chakotay's like, hey, shoot some of the torpedoes off. Janeway's like, no, I want to save it for the last thing. They use a torpedo. They fly out, and they barely get through. In the process, they flew into this thing to get more gas for the ship. As they escape this nebula, they lose 11% of their energy reserves, which I would think is okay. You just took a black eye over your fucking coffee. Maybe you learned a lesson. Nope. They want to fly back in. In the middle of all of this mess, my big takeaway, and I would say the strongest point of the episode for me, was Neelix, who is a super curmudgeon towards all of this. And it's like, says what I've basically been saying. You've got this perfectly great ship that can get you guys home at a reasonable speed, theoretically. Why are you going to sidetrack into every fucking hazardous situation you possibly can find? Like, why go out of your way to just routinely endanger this crew? And like, that's his words verbatim. And I just fell in love with Snarf Snarf at that exact moment.
He shows a distinct lack of gratitude towards the people who just got done saving his life.
Oh yeah, totally. And hypocritical too. Let me chime in on that. He's over there condemning these people for, wandering off and being reckless and straying away from the intended goal. Motherfucker, you did that exact thing. You wandered off from the away team mission. You willfully disregarded Chakotay's direct orders to get back over there. You got your fucking lungs stolen by flesh-ripping zombies for your explorer spirit.
Now everyone else is fucking stupid. Like, he's like, they're idiots. Like, bitch, who's the idiot from last week? You were Mr. Gung-ho about being part of the crew and being part of the explorer team. Now, if he had said, like, I got my fucking lungs stole out, the galaxy is dangerous, fuck all this, I'd have been 100% with him. Like,
you and I,
bravo, yes.
You and I have a unique, viewpoint on all this stuff now, since we both only have one lung. We should be very careful out there. But, I appreciated his condemning speech. And I also like the fact, I've always thought, in Star Trek, especially Next Gen, you got all these windows. In Next Gen, you've got this huge civilian complement on this crew. Like, how terrifying, as you explore these dangerous, neat regions of space. I'm talking before about, like, all the deep space horrors that they hide from Starfleet cadets. Anybody looking out the window is going to see, like, God knows what. And this was a cool episode where Neelix just looks out and like, what the fuck is that outside the window? I've never seen that before. It doesn't look safe. It looks like we're being attacked by white blood cells. I'm going to go tell the captain what's up.
I do like that he gets a little time to statutorily rape his child bride, who has a nicer wig now.
Oh, yeah, much nicer wig.
Or maybe they're using her real hair. I don't know. But it was a marked improvement.
Yeah, her squire's hair is gone. So, they shoot this photon torpedo. They fly out. I'm going to tell you, this is the first time I think I've ever watched like a Star Trek episode. And like, I genuinely and honestly hope, I'm like, God, I hope this episode's just over. Like, they seem to have resolved the problem. I haven't been watching. I don't know how much longer is going on here, but I hope this is just over now. Nope.
I was on the edges of my seat waiting for the next ridiculously offensive thing to happen. I was like, are we going to get another scene where we talk about Chakotay's magic Indian powers? Or is it going to be more Tom Paris trying to recruit people to come to his J.O. fantasy? Which is it going to be? I'm so excited. No, instead we get Janeway treating the doctor like a robo-slave. She calls him up during this adventure with this nebula, which turns out to be a living being that they hurt with their little intrusion. Once again, they punctured a hole in something and they gotta go fix it.
Yeah, space police force paramedics. There was a good exchange between B'Elanna and the doctor, where she goes in to get some consultation. And man, he is just set to maximum sass. Like when she's like going on, like, "Hey, here's my train of thought," and I think it's like something about peptide bonds, and he's like, "And you were doing so good." I've been like, "Motherfucker, what did you?" I will delete your ass. I will reformat you right the fuck now.
He doesn't give a shit, and he's treated like garbage by everybody, though, so you can see why he's probably not giving a shit. Janeway literally, like, waves her hand and silences him when he's back-talking her.
She pulls Q parlor tricks out on him.
It's just like, and you get this background acting from Robert Picardo while he's on the view screen, like being pissed off and then like waving his arms when he has something to say. Like, no, turn me back on. I can solve your stupid problem, you dumb fucks.
It was impossible to concentrate on anything in that scene other than him in the back view screen. Like, I don't know what the fuck any of those people said. They might as well just been sitting there like running their fingers over their lips, like, because they didn't matter. It was all about him in the background, stealing the show. So good on him. And another cool Doctor moment I thought was that he knew so much excessively about his maker. For what the EMS is supposed to be, or the EMH, this disposable doctor, the fact that he has like full knowledge of his maker and the design process and all that seems like a waste of like storage space and computational power for him. So I thought that was interesting that he was so well versed on his own program history, I guess you'd call it.
Believe it or not, you touched on a detail they're actually going to follow up on a few times.
Yeah.
And in a couple ways that ended up... One episode in particular that's early that discusses the Doctor's limitations in programming, I think is very good. And I'm looking forward to that.
The character you always have to compare him to is essentially Data, because both are ultimately AI systems. And you know, it's one of those things that always makes the concept of Data seem dated, like, you know, this robot that has white skin and yellow eyes because the maker couldn't get him quite right, when, you know, you've got real dolls out on the market now that are dead ringers for humans. And now more to the point that, you know, the Doctor's personality seems so much more robust than Data's. Just makes it seem dated. But
you gotta give a little bit of leeway to a show made in the 80s.
Oh yeah, of course, and you do. And it's, you know, it's always hard when you're dealing with the future to not let the evolution of real life science and technology not just shove you with both hands forwards. I think at some point they said like how big the Enterprise D's data core was or something. It was like very doable by today's standards.
Don't they use like gigaflops or something like that, or gigaquads or some?
Oh no, you're right. That's right. They made something that's just a complete unquantifiable. That you're right. You're right. My bad.
We get all of the plot technobabble that the nebula is alive. We heard it. We've got to go fix it. It's boring as fuck. We're gonna
endanger everybody's fucking life, and we're gonna fly in there.
Most of the time, it's just let's pass the dialogue stick from character to character to deliver the next technobabble line. The only bit about this main plot I liked was the scene when Neelix shows up in Janeway's office after they've made the call to go back in to patch up this hole they put into this thing. He wants basically to get off the ride before they go and endanger themselves again. And Janeway tells him, "Fuck you. You're sticking around until this one's over." In fact, she's like, I think she says, like Jonah and the whale, "You're going in," and then tells him to leave. It's the only scene in the episode where Janeway seems to put her captain hat back on and doesn't take any shit from anybody. The rest of the time, she's way too eager to be everyone's friend, which I guess is the point, that she's trying to find the happy medium between being the dispassionate captain and being the community leader. But because she plays it as so weirdly awkward.
Let me go ahead and ring the Maquis bell again. You have flown into a dangerous unknown. You know, the reason they gave is coffee, but in you know, realistically, they're going in there to get some space gas, which they legitimately need. You get your ass kicked in there. You don't get what you were after. And in the process of barely escaping, you lose 11% of your storage energy. You get out and you look real hard at the situation, and for the right reasons. You know, she says, "I want to know what in there, how I was able to circumvent every defensive system the Federation's most advanced vessel had." Great idea of weaponizing your environment. That's exactly what I said about the phage. If you've got walls that can reflect phasers, you better fucking coat your ships in that stuff.
Exactly.
You find out, oh, okay, we made it have a boo-boo. And then you get the idea you're going to fly back in and try and play Space Doctor. You went in, you got your ass kicked, you lost energy, and instead of just cutting your losses and flying back towards home, like Neelix says, you want to go back in there and roll the dice again. Like, again, the Maquis, these space terrorists who aren't Starfleet really, and, are scrappy space dudes. No, the mutiny thing just keeps coming up in my head. At what point do you fucking pull Janeway out of command and say, look, you are endangering everybody needlessly, repeatedly. You are not fit for command. You need to get the fuck out of here and just space her ass.
If they had bothered to explore that at any depth, it would have made for an amazing show. And wouldn't you know it, like, I think we have charted out how you would do it. It's not like this would have been our big reach. They've set themselves up to be able to tell the story, and they don't really. Seska's stuff is the closest that we get to anyone having those feelings. And they basically, the way they end up othering Seska to justify it means it doesn't have much impact. And obviously we'll address that when we get to those episodes. But it's dumb. It continues to be dumb. Your headcanon is way better than anything they've come up with. But what is there to say about the rest of the episode?
I got a couple things to say. I got a big honorable mention here. This episode, when they fly back in and the ship starts getting knocked around and fucked up again, we get our first bona fide dude engineering falling off a glass catwalk.
Oh yeah, we do. We get some solid space turbulence, and we get some stunt work.
That space turbulence is way better than the initial flight across the galaxy. This dude falls at least 18 feet. And I'm like, fuck yeah, man, that guy just got launched. Like, what a huge OSHA compliance risk that is. Like, there's not proper banister work up there at all. And then what I love about it is it's another instance of Kim getting called out like a bitch. They're like, damage report. And Kim's like, everything's fine. And then Chakotay's like, nuh-uh, the optics are fucked up too. And just needlessly dunks on Kim. But they chime in, they're like, no reported injuries. Like, excuse me? Some dude just fell 2 stories onto the hard ass engineering deck. Unless he's a magic species that has pointy ears and a ridge on their nose that's made out of fucking rubber and just bounce back up on their feet. I think there's at least 1 injury down there. And then of course, probably the lowest point of the entire episode was their red alert and that's some dumb shit where they've essentially rolled out the space. What's the word I'm looking for? The xenophysiology, cryptozoology. Is that unknown?
Yeah, cryptozoology is the study of Bigfoot and that sort of thing. So the space equivalent of that. Yeah.
So the alien nebula physiology, cryptozoology, jump to conclusion medical guide, where within 5 lines of dialogue, they've completely anthropomorphized this nebula to a living system with a circulatory system and all this other crap, and they're gonna use its blood capillary system to whisk themselves, whatever, some cockamamie bullshit. And it's a pretty tense moment. They're like, oh, we don't know if we're gonna be able to help this thing and ultimately escape without having to blast our way out again or bad stuff. It's a red alert situation. Red alert's flashing, the lights are dimmed down. And what happens? Neelix and Kes just roll up into the fucking bridge with spanakopita or some sort of Greek.
They come with hors d'oeuvres. They come with appetizers. They're rolling in like they're at a fucking wedding.
Yes. I see our hors d'oeuvre services have started. Please help yourself. No operational security at all. These fucking crazy space people you picked up just walking anywhere they want. There's no security on the bridge. Would
you like a Swedish meatball? Here you go. In the middle of your spatial crisis, would you care for some of our cheese plate?
Would you want to hear my stupid reasoning for being here? Oh, come on, Neelix. You really had my you're tugging at my heartstrings with your critical thinking about why to stay the fuck out of dangerous areas. And now you've just rolled over and given up and playing along on this. I thought it was a pretty strong scene for Neelix, and it was amusing, but it was just stupid. That's the second time where like completely inappropriate behavior takes place during work hours. The first time was Chakotay trying to get Janeway high for her 5 minute spiritual voyage. and then him busting up in there during the middle of a space emergency to give people Swedish meatballs.
The episode wraps on the space space entity being healed. They're out like 20% of their energy, and
yeah, dude.
And then so it's a big L. They take the L, and they wrap at the Tom Paris sex fantasy cruise, and that's it. That's where they leave it.
There's one omission you made that I thought was strong enough to mention here. When they have to find out. One of those stupid, like, we'll have a casual conversation and something you say will trigger my my moment of genius to figure out how to correct this. Who's Janeway talking about where she starts going on about dogs?
Oh, so
Paris?
Well, so she's on the bridge, and that's when we heard in the pilot that Janeway has a dog. So we know that about her character, and so they're talking about the whole suture plans, and the doctor's. Right. The doctor suggests, of course, use a 20th century medical analogy to describe what they're going to do with the ship to fix the problem, blah, 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 doesn't matter. And they use a probe. They shoot a probe off, essentially, to distract the creature's immune system.
Fluffy bullshit. The line she says is like, I had a dog. It wanted to bite me when I tried to fix its wound. I had to distract it. She leads into it, and the line jumped out to me. Because she's talking to Paris, right?
Correct.
She's like, you like Daags? And I'm thinking, it's like
I thought of the same line from Snatch. Absolutely.
That needs to be the title for this episode. You like Daags? I'm sorry, Captain. Are you talking about that 20th century movie Snatch?
Sure, I like Daags.
But for what? The Germans come? Oh no! What do you need that gun for? The Germans. Just such a
movie's amazing.
Unlike this fucking episode, I'm glad you had such a good time walking around the ship. Just a completely forgettable snore.
I was like a pig in shit. It was just so bad from beginning to end with so much weird shit in it, and then just ends. It ends with the big L. We go back to the Tom Paris sex den. And everyone's just having a good time. It's ha 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 as the ship goes out into the, like, everything's fine. We lost 20% of our shit. We're all kind of standing around in Tom Paris's dried up semen, but we're all fine now. It's fine here.
Well, I just lost a fifth of the ship's energy, needlessly.
Oh. I'm gonna have a weird sex encounter with this spiny head faked alien that my former convict B&E artist, rather a helmsman, created on the holodeck, and we're all gonna enjoy together because apparently the 24th century is one big fucking swinger party.
Yeah, man, it's I think this episode did more detriment to like legit character development. Like when you really look deep on like a lot of the stuff, you're like, I don't think they were really going for a lot of the take homes that you got out of this episode. This might have been a step in the wrong direction.
You can see what they intended to do, and it just every beat was bad. I liked one scene with Janeway where she's given Neelix the business, and I liked everything with the Doctor because it builds on his curmudgeonly, I am a footstool that does not enjoy how you're putting his feet on him kind of personality. Everything else, I mean, the Tom Paris stuff is so weird and so strange. I loved it, but it was also bad.
Yeah, I liked Neelix real talk and some stuff that I've complained about frequently, and I like the you like Daags.
You like Daags? Sure. Oh, you mean dogs?
Next?
Yeah, sure. I like Daags.
What's next?
The next episode is Eye of the Needle, which is a pretty good one. So we're gonna swing back to quality. I have
about time. 2 steps in the wrong direction here. I need something good.
Yeah, I've had a rough time with the last couple times out, so this will be refreshing. I have an adventure to tell you about. I went on to Reddit.
Oh yeah.
And I asked them a question that came
subreddit?
from our discussions. So I went to the main Star Trek subreddit, and I asked.
Man, that's a corner of the internet I've never been to. I never even thought to look into Star Trek.
Oh, and these guys. I mean, you think you and me are Star Trek nerds.
Oh no, I know goddamn well. We are drops in the bucket.
There's vistas of autism that we cannot dare to dream of, and so I posed to the Star Trek subreddit, "Hey, I'm doing this podcast. A friend of mine and I are going through Voyager."
Do not invite these people to our podcast, Joe.
No, not doing that. But what I did ask was, we have consistently brought up how Voyager is, as an Intrepid class starship, is supposed to be this exploration vessel, yet seems to be entirely unprepared to engage in exploration. And
wait, before you give the answer on that, I want to say this episode did have another good throwaway line.
And it proved part of my headcanon, yes. I was about to mention that, yes. It proved they didn't have his counselor because they were on a bounty hunt.
For some fucking reason. But yeah.
I told you. I fucking told you that part of the reason why they were staffed the way they were was the mission.
Frantic retconning. I think if they had thought in advance to say something like that, they would have just as soon killed the counselor off. And I think that's an answer they could use for a lot of things when they encounter problems with, we need thing X, we need a person with Y skill set, they're not there. Hey, they got jettisoned into space when the hull got ripped open and we got fucked up in the jump. They, got knocked off a second-story glass bridge and broke their neck.
I like that the reason why they're unprepared is that they were on a bounty hunt. I think that's a perfectly logical explanation. Why would you put your... Well, that's just it. I asked the subreddit, so why is the ship bad at exploring if it's an exploration vessel? And almost immediately, I got a reply from someone that says, actually, there's lines of dialogue in a future episode where Paris talks about the ship's capabilities as one built for combat, not exploration specifically. And I expressed wonderment at that. And I said, well, I thought all the Apocrypha, all of the techno manuals they talk about Intrepid-class starships being built for science and exploration. They can defend themselves. They're very advanced, but like any Federation vessel, it's multi-purpose. And these in particular are like smaller exploration-oriented ships. Mm-hmm. And they're like, you are correct, but the show's not very well written. And Paris has specific dialogue where he says this was a ship built to fight. It was not built to explore.
To that I say, why did the Kmart Klingons give you a run for the money then? Why did you sacrifice one of the two fucking vessels you had to serve as Noah's Ark to get you guys home into crashing into the Kmart Klingon school bus in Caretaker Chakotay, you fucking asshole?
Well, the answer to that question is because the show isn't very well written.
Yeah. All right. So anyways, along those lines, along the lines of flying twice into a space monster, as Neelix put it appropriately, and losing 20% of your fucking energy stores over coffee, I give you the third Ferengi rule of acquisition. Never spend more for an acquisition than you have to.
They overbought on that coffee. They went for the Kona blend, and they did not get their money's worth.
Mm-hmm. Neither did we.
We'll leave it there, sir. This has been Voyager, please, a hateful voyage through the Delta Quadrant. Please like us on Facebook, find us on Twitter, locate us on iTunes. We're on Google Play Music. We are on Spotify.
Give us your feedback. I want to know what you guys are thinking, what you want to hear more of, what you want to hear less of. We're sitting at right now an hour and 7 minutes. If you guys think these podcasts run too long, drop us a line. Let us know, hey, I'm looking for the 30 to 45. If you're like me and you just leave this thing on during a long car ride, we'll keep going this length.
Yeah, give us feedback. Give us feedback on every aspect of the production, and we will certainly take it to heart. We're doing it for us, but, we're doing it for you guys too. So let us know. Follow us and engage. So I'm Joseph.
Engage. I did it with my fingers too.
I know.
Yeah. All right, this is Peter.
And thank you for listening to Voyager, please. Very hateful voyage.
Very, very exceedingly hateful.
Through the Delta Quadrant.
Motherfucking voyage. All right, bye.